Coming up on Network Africa. At least 32 people killed as heavy rains and floods paralyzed Nairobi, Kenya's capital. The United Nations objects to the UK Parliament's approval of a controversial bill that allows deportation of asylum seekers to Rwanda. Plus, children among 16 people dead after asylum seeker boat capsizes off Djibouti. Hello, welcome to the program. I'm Amarachi Ubani here in Lagos. We begin in Kenya, where the capital has been overwhelmed with rain and floods. Roads have turned into rivers in Nairobi as the flooding is set to have escalated to extreme levels. Heavy rain has pounded Kenya in recent days, causing widespread devastation. The UN says at least 32 people have lost their lives and more than 40,000 others have been forced from their homes because of the rain and flooding. Wider East Africa has also been badly affected by heavy rain in recent weeks. Nearly 100,000 people have been displaced in Burundi, while at least 58 people have died in Tanzania. And as the rains continue to pour, Kenyan doctors continue their strike despite all efforts for resolution with the government. Negotiations between the government and striking doctors have collapsed, prolonging the suffering of Kenyans seeking health care in public hospitals. A strike organized by the Kenya Medical Practitioners, Pharmacists and Dentists Union is entering its second month. The union's grievances include pay disputes and the failure to hire trainee doctors. The striking doctors also want the Kenyan government to fully cater for their medical insurance cover, honor agreements and promotions, and improve their working conditions. These are top issues on the continent. Let's bring in Kenyan journalist Cyrus Ombati, who's in Nairobi. Cyrus, great to see you. But let's begin with the floods now. We've seen some of the pictures, parts of Nairobi overwhelmed. What parts are affected? And do paint a picture for us about the situation on the ground. Cyrus, I'm hoping you can hear me. Cyrus, I'm hoping you can hear me. Could you talk about the floods, the parts of Nairobi that are flooded?
Thank you for having this show today.
Seem to be having problems with the connection there in Nairobi, Kenya. We'll return to this conversation as soon as we can. In the meantime, when natural disasters such as floods, droughts, hurricanes, heat waves occur, the impact is usually devastating. Even though some of these situations cannot be completely avoided, discussions are ongoing as reducing the impact on humanity. As one part of discussions when concerned environmentalists met in Lagos, Nigeria, our correspondent Kelly Giga was there and now reports.
It's a gathering of researchers from tertiary institutions such as Lead Center University, Ibadan, the University of Lagos, the Nigerian Institute of Social and Economic Research, government representatives, the private sector, and media for the Lagos Inception Meeting, a project facilitated by Palm Trees Nigeria. In their opening remarks, organizers outlined the essence of the project to include influence climate risk policies and practices impacting those on the margins across regions in the continent.
The strongest point of this project is that it's going to look at things from the perspective of the margins. Who are the margins? Of course, you know what I'm talking about. The homeless, the women, the widow, and those who ordinarily their voices don't count when it comes to policy.
Before now, policymakers are in one place, they draft policy statements. Those in the classroom, the academia, they will give the scientific facts. But before now, we have not really been working together. So this project is also in a way to bring about synergy.
For others, governments at all levels must pay attention to environment-friendly policies, but more importantly, implement findings by researchers.
The main concern, as far as I'm concerned, is the issue of the adoption and utilization of research findings for policy design and implementation. I would say it is not peculiar to NISA and other research institutes. It is also common among institutions that are involved in research, particularly the universities.
There is also a word of caution for Nigerians.
We need a behavioral shift. There are natural forces of extreme events, the ones that are coming just because the way the nature is reacting. But they are being amplified because of our mismanagement of environmental resources, our misbehavior of managing our waste.
Everybody has a role to play, whether poor country or rich country. We need to talk about sustainability. We need to be concerned about sustainability because our environment is our biggest asset.
Facilitators of the Palm Trees project say they aim to create transformative climate information tools by including stakeholders and communities in a transdisciplinary research approach to support equitable resilience strategies across 6 countries in Africa. Kelly Egiga, Channels Television News.
We return to our lead story now, which is the floods in Nairobi, Kenya. 32 people are said to have died so far. More than 40,000 have been displaced from their homes. Wider East Africa has been badly affected by heavy rains in recent weeks. Nearly 100,000 people have been displaced in Burundi alone, and 58 people have died in Tanzania. Well, the floods in Kenya could get worse, according to meteorologists, as they predict more days of rains and flooding. Journalist Cyrus Ombati is in Nairobi for us. Cyrus, great to see you, and I'm glad the floods have not affected your movement. Let's talk about that, though. We've seen some of the pictures, parts of Nairobi overwhelmed. What parts are affected? And do paint a picture for us about the situation on the ground.
Thank you for having me on the show. Actually, the most affected people are those who are in the slums, the informal settlement areas. They are the ones affected because so far today, like a place called Madare, they have collected 12 bodies. Those who have kind of swept away by the water, and thousands are displaced. Apart from Madare itself, there are many other informal settlement areas which are affected, heavily affected. Even these other formal areas, flooding, there are some areas have been submerged by water, so residents cannot be able to get out of their houses. It's a crisis actually which have never been seen before.
So the weather agencies say that the downpour is expected to continue. They're predicting there could be more days of flooding. So is it still raining?
Yeah, like now it's been raining the entire afternoon now. It's flooding all over Nairobi. The water department has said it's going to continue raining tonight, tomorrow, and until the end of May. So we are expecting more problems in the coming days, not only Nairobi, because other parts of the country are experiencing things like landslides, which are displacing many people. So it's a crisis all over that people, we don't know how long it's going to take, but we hope that there will be help coming from other places here and there.
That's probably why the government said it's overwhelmed, with the situation on the ground. But what are they doing in the meantime?
Well, they're just advising people to move away from those affected areas. They're just moving around food. Those who have been displaced, they have given food and blankets to sleep maybe in churches or schools. That's all they can do the best now. The police are being deployed on roads to block those who are flooded roads. The people cannot pass there. So it's just an issue of caution here and there because there's nothing more they can do. It's a kind of natural disaster which is coming up now.
Now, people are being rescued from the rooftop of their houses, Cyrus. That's what we're learning. There's even a unique case of a young boy who was rescued from the top of the rooftop of his house. He was abandoned by his father when the flood started. The father left him and fled. Have they been reunited? Do you know?
Yeah, it was yesterday somewhere called Machakos, and the area is a place where a big river passes through to the Indian Ocean. So the house was marooned, and the father ran away and left the young boy. It took the police to come in to help. It took police to come in to help to rescue the boy using a chopper. He was reunited with the family, and now so far he's okay.
Well, thank God that that has happened. Is there any camp where these people who have been evacuated, because I imagine there could be more in the coming days, 40,000 people already displaced. Is there a sort of temporary camp to house them and to provide just the basics for them as we wait for the waters to recede?
Some are seeking help from their parents, their friends and relatives. Some are kind of camping in a schools, churches. I mean, there's no formal place we can say a government is helping them, but it's upon you as an individual who's affected to seek where you can camp and wait for help. That's the situation actually, and it's unfortunate for now.
Well, thanks for this, Cyrus. But let's move to the striking doctors. 2 months now, they have been on the streets demanding better pay, better, remunerations from the government. They don't seem to be backing down. So why did the latest round of talks collapse? Was this a fault of the government?
Well, yeah, it's because of the government, because part of the deals which you are supposed to sign was about the intern doctors. The intern doctors, they make a big group of doctors who are emerging from the training schools to join the industry. So the government doesn't want to pay intern doctors around 20,000 Kenyan shillings as a salary or the kind of a pay. And it was part of the demand by the doctors for them to be kind of pursuing duties. But when the so-called deal was arrived yesterday, it was missing. So the doctor said, no, we can't. We rather even abandon the other issues which we had than or make sure that the intern doctors are involved in this deal. So that's where the standoff is. When people are suffering, I can tell you, because public hospitals, like today, we visited the many public hospitals, they're empty. People are seeking, we can say, bad treatment from where you can. But now that the situation is bad. It's bad for now.
Great situation in Kenya. Thank you, Cyrus. Do stay safe.
Thank you so much.
And Botswana says the British government had approached the country to ask whether it would be willing to receive migrants deported from the UK. Foreign Minister Lemongang Gwape was speaking to a South African TV channel, saying Botswana refused the request because she's dealing with her own migration issues. Mr. Gwape added that contact was made by Britain's Foreign Secretary and its Minister for Africa through diplomatic channels. This follows unconfirmed reports earlier this month in the British press that the UK government was seeking to replicate its controversial Rwanda scheme in Botswana, Armenia, Cote d'Ivoire, and Costa Rica. Top UN officials have raised alarm over the UK Parliament's approval of that controversial bill that paves the way for asylum seekers to be deported to Rwanda. The Safe to Rwanda Asylum and Immigration Bill, aimed to deter migrants from entering the UK legally, was passed after months of wrangling ended in a parliamentary showdown on Monday night. Filippo Grandi, the UN High Commissioner for Refugees, and the UN High Commissioner for Human Rights, Volker Turk, in a joint statement called on the UK government to reconsider the plan. They warned the policy would have a harmful impact on human rights and refugee protection.
Filippo Grandi and Volker Turk are calling on the UK government to reconsider its plan to transfer asylum seekers to Rwanda and instead to take practical measures to address irregular flows of refugees and migrants based on international cooperation and respect for international human rights law.
Under the UK-Rwanda Asylum Partnership, asylum seekers in the UK will be transferred to Rwanda before their claims for asylum can be heard in the UK. And we think that that is inconsistent with global solidarity and responsibility sharing, and is also in breach of the 1951 Refugee Convention, to which the UK is, of course, a signatory.
At least 16 people have died, 28 others still missing after a boat carrying asylum seekers capsized off the coast of the Horn of Africa nation of Djibouti. According to the U.S. Migration Agency, the accident occurred on Monday night, about 2 weeks after another boat carrying mainly Ethiopian asylum seekers sank off the Djibouti coast, killing several dozen people on the perilous so-called Eastern migration route from Africa to the Middle East. Similarly, at least 33 Ethiopian migrants, including an 8-year-old boy, have died after their boat capsized off the coast of Djibouti. Officials from the IOM say they're among 77 people crossing the Red Sea from Yemen to Ethiopia. Fishermen alerted coast guards to the tragedy on Tuesday after witnessing some of the migrants drowning. Rescuers managed to save more than 20 people. Others are still at sea. And in North Africa, the bodies of 19 people have been recovered off the coast of Tunisia, one of the primary points of departure for those seeking to traverse the Mediterranean Sea to Europe. The Tunisian Coast Guard says it had recovered the bodies near the port cities of Mahida and Sfax, the country's second largest city, where migrants have in recent weeks clashed with law enforcement. Despite risks, migrants continue to attempt the treacherous voyage from North Africa to Europe, traveling in boats from Morocco, Algeria, Tunisia, and Libya to Italy, Greece, Malta, and Spain's Canary Islands. More than 49,000 people have come to Europe by sea this year, including more than 7,000 from Tunisia to Italy. Staying in the country, though, Tunisia has hosted the first consultative meeting between the leaders of Algeria and Libya in Tunis, bringing together Tunisian President Kais Saied, Algerian counterpart Abdelmadjid Tebboune, and Libyan Presidential Council head Mohamed Younes al-Menfi at the Carthage Palace. The three leaders held a trilateral dialogue session with their respective delegations. The Maghreb Union leaders agreed on the sidelines of a summit in Algeria at the beginning of March to hold a tripartite meeting every 3 months, with the first to be held in Tunisia after the month of Ramadan. Morocco and Mauritania did not attend the meeting, although they're part of the Arab Maghreb Union. The union was founded in Marrakesh in 1989 to enhance political and economic ties between Morocco, Algeria, Mauritania, Tunisia, and Libya. Now, here in West Africa, a group of Malian political parties and civil society organizations are appealing to the Supreme Court to annul the junta's ban on political activities. In a statement, the group says it's appealing to Mali's top court with the aim of annulling the decree, which they consider tyrannical and oppressive. The ruling junta suspended all political parties and activities on April 10th. This followed a demand made in March by more than 80 political parties and civil society organizations for a return to constitutional order by holding presidential elections as soon as possible. The West African country has been under military rule since a coup in 2020, followed by a second in 2021. The transitional government had promised to restore civilian rule by March 2024 after elections in February this year, but authorities announced in September they would postpone elections indefinitely. Talks have begun between the authorities in Niger and the U.S. for the withdrawal of American troops stationed in 2 air bases in the Sahelian nation. Yesterday, both parties gave confirmation amid the decision of the Nigerian government last month to end military cooperation agreements with Washington. Through 2 bases in Niger, the U.S. has over the past decade performed counterterrorism and global security operations against ISIS and Al-Qaeda in the West African region. The future of those operations have been cast into doubt, but the U.S. Pentagon spokesperson, Major General Pat Ryder, tried to allay fears.
Well, I mean, what I would say is that we can confirm that discussions have begun between the United States and Niger for the orderly withdrawal of U.S. forces from the country. In the near future, the Department of Defense will provide a small delegation from the Pentagon and U.S. Africa Command to participate in those discussions. Yeah, Carl, I don't have anything for you at this stage. Again, we're beginning these discussions. As I highlighted, there is a terrorist threat that exists within the continent of Africa and certainly in the Sahel region and West Africa. And so as we step back and AFRICOM looks at that threat, we'll continue to work with regional partners to address how best to ensure that we can continue to do the kinds of things we do to not only protect our national interests, but also look at the collective security of regional partners in Africa. So more to follow when we have it, but right now I don't have an answer to that. Thank you very much, everybody. Appreciate it.
FSC to step up the implementation of the Sustainable Development Goals as the focus of the ongoing 10th session of the African Regional Forum of Sustainable Development in Addis Ababa, Ethiopia. In 2024, member states and their partners are past midway in the implementation of the 2030 agenda, and yet progress on most SDGs is off track, with experts saying progress is either moving too slowly or has regressed below the 2015 baseline. Our correspondent, Ayola Kasim, reports from Addis Ababa.
For about a week now, informal meetings, stakeholders workshops, side events have been taking place here at the headquarters of the United Nations Economic Commission for Africa, and their focus is majorly on coding for girls, climate change, science, technology, food systems, and the major takeaway has been most countries on the continent will not meet the Sustainable Development Goals by 2030. So as delegates arrive here for the 10th session of the African Regional Forum on Sustainable Development, they hope to address the shortcomings and capitalize on the emerging opportunities for the continent. Leading the delegates is Deputy Secretary General of the United Nations, Amina Mohamed, who not only urged African countries to scale up action in key transitions and investment pathways and accelerate progress towards the Sustainable Development Goals, but also asked them to take up the opportunities of critical transitions available both regionally and nationally that can help the continent to make progress. And to the international banks and development partners, her message is simple.
At the heart of this, like so much else, is finance. Now is the time to rethink austerity-oriented international policies, reduce debt servicing costs, and ensure a more equitable global taxation system so that African countries can do what we know they want to do, to invest more efficiently, more equitably in capacities and the skills of their people.
With poverty, hunger, insecurity, and large-scale deprivation on the continent, many here agree African governments cannot afford to continue with business as usual, and most of them must go back to the basics.
The basics we know are that we need to look inward and make sure that we create strong institutions that are going to be accountable to the citizens and to deliver what the citizens need. If we need to talk about development, if we need to talk about security and stability, if we need to talk about good governance, what we need indeed is for governments to do the basics of catering for their people.
For the next 2 days, delegates here will, among other things, be deliberating on transformative, innovative, and ambitious interventions necessary to reinforce the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development and Agenda 2063, as well as refining policies on eradicating poverty on the continent in this time of multiple crises. From UNECA headquarters in Addis Ababa, Ayola Kasim, Channels Television News.
And following consultation with public health authorities and experts, the World Health Organization has published a global technical consultation report introducing updated terminology for pathogens to transmit through the air. The pathogens covered include those that cause respiratory infections like COVID-19, influenza, measles, Middle East Respiratory Syndrome, MERS, severe acute respiratory syndrome, SARS, and tuberculosis, among others. The publication is entitled Global Technical Consultation Report on Proposed Terminology for Pathogens that Transmit Through the Air, and is a result of an extensive multi-year collaborative effort between the WHO experts and major public health agencies.
Is to bring what has been different communities of scientific experts together. Instead of working in their own disciplines, try and bring nurses, public health, epidemiologists, physicists, engineers, all together to agree on a common set of terminology, of words that we can all agree on, and then we can go forward and do the science that will guide how we then go about making sure that we can control pandemics, including COVID, but not limited to COVID. It's a hugely important first step. But next, we need to keep the disciplines, the experts together. We're using the same terminology, the same language, and now we need to do the science that provides the evidence on tuberculosis, on COVID and other respiratory pathogens, so that we know how to control those infections better than we have done in the past. And I think what this document does is bring the disciplines together and get common agreement. When I say aerosol, when I say through the air, it doesn't matter whether I'm an engineer, a clinician, a nurse, a public health person. We know we mean the same thing. Now the communities have got to stay together and work together, but also challenge each other. And that's the joy of working across disciplines. This document brings people together. All the 500 experts agree with this new terminology, and now we can move forward. And I hope those interfaces between disciplines now stay in place. I hope the funders fund that interdisciplinary work, because I think this is so important.
That's on Network Africa this hour. Thanks for watching. I'm Amarachi Ubadi. Stay with Channels Television.